This is ICASTnews.com, live and direct from United Nations headquarters in New York City. And this is the Russia folder. If you had any doubts that those who've been talking about a new Cold War having settled in U.S.-Russian relations, you could relieve your doubts by listening to the State of the Union address by the President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama. Mr. Obama's words about Russia were gleeful when they talked about how the economy there was swirling out of control and down. They were self-congratulatory about how sanctions put in place because of the invasion of Crimea and the Russian-backed insurgency in eastern Ukraine. They were gleeful about how the Russian economy was being spoiled. They were supportive, not quite the level of support that we once saw for rebels in places like Hungary in '56, but very positive in favor of Ukraine. And they were the most Cold War, hawkish, anti-Russian sentiments heard from a president in the halls of Congress in a very long time. A lot of rhetoric, a lot of attack. And it may, in fact, embolden Mr. Putin that he's got little to lose. The Russians are on the move in Ukraine. There's said that the rebel forces have taken over the last airport that was being contested, that they are fully in control of the city Donetsk. Their leader, Alexander Zakharchenko, says that they are not going to make peace with the government in Kiev, that they are going to push out their borders. Reliable Western news agencies have shown video testimony to the fact that Russian army vehicles, tanks, armored personnel carriers, Grad rockets, Kamaz trucks are on the move in eastern Ukraine. The UN Commission for Refugees has now reported that more than 5,000 people have died. Numbers are much probably higher than that. There are approximately 600,000 refugees from the area being sheltered in Ukraine, and a like number of people who are being sheltered in Russia. Most alarming in the way of a winter offensive, there are reports coming in not only is there a refusal on the Russian side to do anything about the Minsk agreement of 17 September to stabilize the frontiers, negotiate, and find a way to back off the conflict, but in fact that there is shelling going on around the Ukrainian town of Mariupol. That little town is on the main road leading towards Crimea. If there is something to watch particular, other than the fighting in Donetsk, it would be to see if there is a winter offensive, an escalation of the fighting to clear a highway corridor down towards Crimea so that it can be supplied easily by road convoys from Mother Russia. And in all the talk coming out of the White House and on Capitol Hill, few people are saying a word about the repression going on inside Russia itself. One of the commentators and one of the people that this reporter values the most, Matvey Ganopolsky, is beginning to talk about the formation of units that are akin to the brown shirts who did dastardly deeds in Nazi Germany. Indeed, Russian observers of a Western orientation are increasingly turning to that as the metaphor. What happened inside Germany in those years between 33 and 36 when Hitler consolidated his power. Matvei has talked about groups of Afghan veterans getting together with groups of pro-Russian great nationalism forces and other activists to form a people's cadre to reinforce conformity to Putin and Putinism and anti-Westernism and down with liberalism. And as things get more constrained there, people are worried. People are worried about what they're going to eat and worried about what they can say and are worried that the kind of repression that the Reds visited on anarchists, that anarchists visited on them, and the kind of victims that both those groups became at the hands of the fascists in Spain during the Civil War will be repeated. So the Spanish Civil War, the movement of brown shirts, of long nights, of long knives, are all taking place in this cold, hostile winter that Mr. Putin and his cronies and the Russian people are experiencing, and which in some ways, both through sanctions and through Cold War rhetoric, are being fed by the increasingly enemy camp in Washington, D.C. For ICASTnews.com, live and direct from United Nations headquarters, not in Washington, D.C., but in a more civilized place, New York City. For the Russia folder, I'm Jonathan Sanders.